Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome back to the end of Planar Crossroads and the other channel that's going to get this uploaded. I'm not particularly sure how fast that will happen, but it's happening right now on the end of Planar Crossroads. So we hope you are enjoying the last two episodes that have been on this topic, with these two topics. So I'm going to release those first, and you guys should be able to see them. Those were the conversations with Zachariah and Jacob. And now I have Kristen and Dan from Avenue
Hello.
Studios.
Hi.
And we are obviously still at Avenue Studios. So that is why it doesn't look like my normal place. So no worries there. We are going to get into it. We're not going to really do a bunch of shout outs aside from I'm from the end of Planar Crossroads. They're from Avenue Studios. And you can find us on, well, I'm on BitChute also, but we're both on Rumble and YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. So unless you guys have anything specific for sure you want to shout out, we're just going to go right into the special episode.
No, I don't think so. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So just like last time, you can grab your preferred beverage and join us around the hearth as we discuss how your faith has influenced your gaming. So, skål.
Cool. I can actually cheers
Ding.
you.
I'm like all the way
Oh,
there.
there we go. Hey, that's fun.
All right. So do y'all have something you want to bounce off of first, or do you want me to get us rolling?
No, yeah. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I think get us wrong. I've been
Yeah, sure.
contemplating this since we talked about this last year. It's been rolling in the back of my mind for a while.
Okie
So
dokie.
it's all a muddle. You can wrangle me.
No worries. Okay. So, kind of like we did last time, I'll start off with the idea that we're coming from a TTRPG perspective, but you can apply the things we'll bring up into almost any type of game you play, because you'll be playing something along this line. But for TTRPGs especially, the GM, the DM, whoever, whatever that is, lore master, whatever you want to say,
Mm-hmm.
in the game, they are the one true God. They are that entity for that. Even if you have a whole bunch of other deities underneath, even if you have a whole bunch of different spiritual powers, or even if it's like ancestors or stuff like that, in the meta of it, in the reality of it, the GM or whoever the leader of the game is going to be imitating the role of the one true God, the arbiter of the rules, the one who's saying this is or isn't canon, this is or isn't actually what's going on, and being hopefully just and righteous in that. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's this idea of imitating God in that. And when it comes from faith influencing gaming, from that angle, how you see God is probably going to be a lot about how you handle authority, how you use authority, and how you appreciate authority. So that's kind of the first spot that I started off with the others. So what do you guys think of that?
Yeah, that's really interesting point. I know generally in that vein, I think one of the things has been being a storyteller too, especially for running the games and everything. That's where I think making sure this is in the right direction, because it might be the flip. But
Well,
yeah,
they're
right.
I know.
See, I told him
into each other. So
He told me he had to wrangle me. Because, yeah, man. No, it's for sure. We've had a lot of discussions, like we had been talking to Austin earlier about that with like having deities in your game and all this stuff. And it's like, I know one of the aspects for me has been, I don't know. See, take what I'm thinking is, because it's like, I feel so imperfect. And this is from a Christian perspective too. I know I'm imperfect and I'm going to fail. I'm going to mess up. And I'm technically in that God position for the game. And it's just, I always struggle with feeling not up to snuff for the position. So that's been something that's I've walked through while playing games too, and being like, maybe getting trying to emulate the God I know and am getting to know all the time through running games and being in that position of leadership. So I don't know. I think that's where I always struggle with the imperfection aspect.
Right. And Jacob brought up when we were there that actually increases his faith, understanding that we have a faith in a perfect God.
Mm-hmm.
But when we try to imitate that, we are, of course, imperfect.
Yeah.
And that imperfection actually helps us backwards to help appreciate his perfection. The fact that,
right,
sure, we're the ones that are arbitrating the rules in the game, but God's arbitrating the rules of life.
Mm-hmm.
And the rules of life, they're not just the moral code that we think of in Scripture. They are actually the very laws that hold the universe together. He's got all of that. He's the master of all of that, the maker of all things. And to be able to really comprehend that, start to try to fill a role like that, you get so much more appreciation.
Yep.
And the games help with that. And that faith also helps towards that in the game.
Right. Thinking about grace too, because I think when you feel that gap when you think about your position in the game and how much of a gap there is. Like sometimes I think in life we don't always think about it because we always want to default to I'm center of the universe, even when we're not meaning to. It's just how we perceive, because we think we're the character. We see it through first player perspective, but we're just a supporting role.
Well, and we kind of touched on this, the idea of we're the main character of our story, but in someone else's story, we're the NPC.
Right. Yes.
And so, using the TTRPG examples again, God's got the campaign ready. He's got all of this ready for you. He's got all of this going. And when we're playing our games, we run adventure paths or something like that. And so God has the adventure path ready for you. He has your adventure path ready for you. And just like in all the best games, there's other people, there's other players that come and cross streams inside your adventure path. And you become an NPC for them, and they become an NPC for you. But to God, you are a character. You are that character. It can help you make better characters and play better NPCs, make them more real in your head when you begin to appreciate the idea that, hey, this person actually is important in their own main story. And the players need to think about that. You as a player, you think about that now, and you're like, oh, well, I gotta behave as if this was happening. And so on and so forth. And the GM, you're obviously trying to think about that to make it real for your players. So.
That's why I was listening to this video about some LARPing groups, and they were talking about in the LARP they were in, they realized they're like, this is quite literally, they realized they were kind of the NPCs because they get up at the same time in the morning, go get their coffee. They'd always walk by the person. It's like, oh, that person's always there. He's an NPC. Wait, actually, are we the NPC for him? Because we always walk by at the same time. That's I hadn't thought about that reverse too, because that is a large part of life.
I guess I've always felt like it was not that we all were NPCs, but we're all PCs. I don't know. Like I feel like we're all just part of God's story. So he is Jesus. Is the main character, and then we're all supporting characters in the big story. But it's not. I feel like I don't even want to take PC. Like I feel like I am an NPC, in the great scheme of everything.
Well, that's not a bad difference of term. Instead of PC and us being main character in our own story, Christ can be the main character when we think about it, and we can be that supporting character.
Yeah, that's kind of
not necessarily PC. Well, you're a PC because it means player character, but
right.
in the sense of being a main character, you're a supporting character
to the larger story,
the greater
story,
and that can speak to the narrative of when we're playing TTRPGs. Usually, the GM has an over story, And the players are directed through that, and they're guided through that, and they're not necessarily railroaded. A concept we brought up in the last one was a better understanding of fate and destiny can be understood here. Because the Bible uses the words fate and destiny. It doesn't even use the word destiny. It uses predestination. And that can throw people off because we have a modern understanding of what destiny is. Destiny to us today is like it's a hard, fast thing that this is what is, period, type of thing. When the Bible translators were using predestinated, it means before you were, God has destined something good for you. But us having free will, like a player has free will, we can choose our fate. And our fate will determine whether we get to heaven or hell, whether we get to choose our end destination and whether we're going to fulfill that destiny or not. So it's not, God doesn't railroad us, but he also has a plan for us. And it's up to us if we fulfill it. Just like it's up to the players if they're even going to go for the adventure hook that you put out for them. So,
which it makes me think of like my start to playing TTRPG, because like Dan and I think were married a couple years before we started, and he, even when we were dating, he was like, well, this is fun thing, you know, TTRPGs, we roll dice and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's nice, you know?
Nerd.
Like, yeah, a little bit of that. But also, I had that thing of like trying to be perfect and to do everything perfect. And part of it was, is having gods for your character, having that conflict of, you know, feeling like I'm worshiping another deity or something, you know, and it was a really hard sticking point for me. But I know that God knows my heart, and he knows we're telling stories, and stories. I mean, Jesus loved telling stories. I mean, he told parables and all those kind of things. And it kind of, you know, helps people to get a better grasp of life, you know. So it was like a slow process and an internal struggle of trying to trust God with it, you know, I guess. Trust that he knows where my heart is and that I'm not worshiping any other deities. It's part of the story in the game, and hopefully that glorifies him in the end to be able to tell a good story.
Right.
So I was just checking Austin stuff because that was an interesting thing. I'd actually be curious about your thoughts on it too, Adam, because when we started doing Bomb Squad, like Austin came to me about that. I can't remember what, but several people came to me about that. And I don't know if I'm just, but it's probably just I didn't think about it. I'm unintelligent, but that never crossed my mind. And for me, it was always like, well, I'm telling a story. None of this is real. It's just a way to me, and it's where I've connected with God a lot in that storytelling aspect. Cause I just love telling stories, and it's like everything God does. He is the master storyteller. So it was never a sticking point for me. And everyone coming to me with that, I was like, okay, I got to look inside and see if I'm not thinking things through at all. For me, from my almost lack of perspective, because I just didn't think about it, was like, well, these are just stories. There's aspects, there's these good aspects, and Austin mentions it in his notes for us too, of I have a moral code that doesn't let me cross the line when I'm pretending to be a different character. Like, all my stories are going to be utterly influenced by my Christian faith. And like, even in all the discussions, we've had all the discussions on alignments and, the cosmic alignment stuff. My stories are always going to have a cosmic Christian value alignment at the end of the day, because that's the story is growing out of me, and that's what my foundation is. So that's why I don't know. It never crossed my mind to look at it that way. Mm-hmm. And it was good to be able, with awesome people like my wife and Austin and stuff talking about it, because I was like, I guess it just never crossed my mind.
Yeah. Well, there's like the comparison of like, do not commit adultery, But then Jesus says, do not even lust after another person, you know?
Right.
So it's like, it almost falls along those same lines to me in my head. It's like, do not follow any other gods. Do not even think about, you know, like kind of thing. So like,
Sure.
I like had a struggle with it, you
And
know?
that, now my what I always came back to is, and I'm going to blank on it, when Paul talks about the eating and not eating the meat given to idols and stuff. And, you know, I think that's where I've fallen with it. Is it literally, it's in my heart. And that's probably why I wasn't even thinking it, because subconsciously I was just like, no, in my heart, I'm not worshiping any of this. This is just part of the story. It's aspect, and all of them either are a representation of something godlike or sin in the story, and that's going to come out. That's going to unfold which line they fall on clearly. So that was something I've talked with people online about now too, of like, if this is drawing you in to if it's pulling you to something evil, then you have to be aware of that and step away. But it's just a tool. It's a tool that can be used for good or evil. I think, but again, I'd be curious where you've crossed on that.
Well, the way I've looked at it, because I've always liked fiction. This is fiction.
Yep.
This is reality. They are two different things, and they're meant to be two different things. So if we're talking about, like, I don't even have a problem with using references to real world deities in a game,
right?
Because in the game, it's all fiction. Do you let your kids watch Disney movies? There's no Christian Disney movie. Do you let your kids...
Ryan's somewhere going, preach.
Do you let your kids watch Shrek? That's got a fairy godmother.
Yeah, right.
It's got all different types of stuff. It's not Christian. I mean, if you never consume any fiction at all, then you could maybe cast the first stone on this idea, is how I look at it. But even if you make up a story for your kids to go to bed by, is that a Christian one? If so, is there any magic in it? If there is, there better not be no fairy godmothers.
Right.
Better not be no pumpkins changing into carriages or anything like that. But we somehow understand that those things, they're not real. They're fairy tales. Christ is real. Jesus is real. And I actually think it's something that in the more modern Western styles of culture and life has been forgotten. That there is a distinction between reality and fiction. And God actually does want us to create things. That's one of the things I've got on here. Christ said, ye are gods, referencing a place in Psalms. And he's talking about little g gods, not big G gods, you know, things like that. But he's saying that because we're made in his image. We are triune like he's triune. We have a body, a mind, and a spirit. And with that triune self, we then go forward and imitate him by creating things. And Zechariah brought up a good point that in this action of creating, we actually praise him in it. That
I was going to say, for his glory.
For his glory, we end up making these things. And someone says, oh, you're so good at this. And you can say, yeah, God's really blessed me with a lot of creativity. All of a sudden, that gives God the glory. And you no longer have to deal with it, because I hate taking compliments.
Yeah, we do.
So it's like, well, to God be the glory then.
Yes.
Is an easy way to get out of that.
Yeah.
And we imitate God by creating as he creates. By world building, we imitate the great maker, the great world builder, the great creator. And that's how I've reconciled the idea of, okay, this is reality, this is fiction, and in this creation, whether it's a good place or a bad place or anything like that, that's not the important part. The important part is that as God created, I now practice my creations, my creative abilities. And this can be in art, it can be in the world building, it can be in whatever skills you have.
Yeah.
You give him the glory in it. Going back to using our talents well or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
I think we just reflect just a little piece of him. I always think back of when we were in a Grace group and Torin was with us. I think we only had Torin at the time. And he was drawing scribbles because he was like, I don't know, 1.5, maybe 2 or something. Yeah. And I was just like, oh my gosh, look at, he's drawing scribbles. Like, I was so excited that he was drawing these scribbles. And just at that time, it just hit me like, oh, this is how God feels about us. You know, like, you did something so awesome, you know, like, and it's a little scribble of what he can do, you know, in the bigger picture.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when your kid comes to you and they say, look, Daddy, I drew you. Are they trying to make an idol out of you?
Right.
Or are they trying to say, look, and they want you to be proud of them, of the art that they made. And God's kind of that way. Yay, we'll put it on the fridge.
Yes.
Even Michelangelo. Oh, great job, you know, like, it's job, amazing. Mikey. But, you know, compared to what God can do.
I know, right? Have you seen a cell?
Yeah. Well, he hadn't, probably.
No, probably not.
To be fair to him.
Yeah. I love that. I was trying to think. I'll peek at Austin's too. Let's see. Oh, these are things from the faith influencing his gaming. Austin said, I have a tendency to play characters that reflect my faith, like Arkiro and Bomb Squad had faith in and followed the one dragon. They're usually lawful or neutral good, which kind of fits with his moral code that he always brings into his characters. And he was pointing out that even if my character would do this, maybe he has a meta moral code from his faith where he'll never have a character that crosses those lines. Even if you're like playing a bad character or something, which we've done before, like he played speaking of vampires, bonus content, is even then he won't cross those lines. And then I'm always seeking to find the hero moment of self-sacrifice or where evil is just simply overwhelmed. Which I think one of the biggest things, I've kind of already said it, but my faith influencing games is that ultimate story, the truest story that's going on of evil coming in, the fall, evil coming in, the sacrifice, and the victory. That's always going to be in there, and that I can't even escape not having that in my stories to some level or the other. Of the sacrifice and victory over evil, all of that. It's always going to be somewhere in there.
Yeah.
I like you.
Yeah.
She's smiling at me.
Oh, I'm just like, it's Jesus.
It's Jesus.
Well, another point, but on a less huge, grand idea, but a more focused on actually using it in your games and things. I like to take, if I'm playing a religious character, maybe I'll take a psalm or something like that and memorize it. Maybe you could play in a different language with it or something like that. Recite the Latin instead of the other, or the Greek instead of the other. And that can be interesting flavor to bring to your games. Taking things from scripture and using them in your games to enliven it and make it actually feel more real. Because there's so much that happens, even cultures that haven't been heavily influenced by Judeo-Christian belief systems have usually a concept of this great flood that covered the world. Well, why is that? Because a great flood covered the world. All the way back, Zach brought it up the last time, and I'll bring it up this time. The Epic of Gilgamesh. Such a good epic. If you want to read you can read it, or you can listen to the audio. And I'm pretty busy, so I listen to the audiobook. But in it, Gilgamesh goes to talk to the grandfather that made it through the flood, the great flood. Well, who's he talking about? He's talking about Noah. He's talking about Noah actually existing through extra Bible sources. That's pretty powerful. And that's why it brings such an authentic feeling to the games, is because way deep down, even in cultures where there's not a huge Judeo-Christian influence, there are these concepts and ideas, and it's why moral codes are actually easy to grasp onto across cultures as far as lawful good, lawful evil, lawful. That whole thing there on the alignment chart actually does translate to other languages, other people, I should say, other cultures. There's a little bit of leeway on cultural type of differences, but the idea of thou shalt not murder, or kill, murder, that translates pretty far. It's usually bad to do that and good not to. So you have these things that are already adding realism to your game simply by you just making it from a Judeo-Christian perspective, from a faith perspective. So
all of that, even at a shallower level too, of just pulling from the old, like I have a cleric of the grave thing, but I really pulled from old monastic traditions and stuff like that to just get exactly what you're saying. And it's fun too, because that kind of is a circle, and you're looking back at our Christian history too, and it's interesting to see that and remember those things and just look at them and study that, and then have it then influence your game, make your characters feel more like that, and it makes the world feel. It gives it the weight of history that you can't just manufacture, because it really happened. Yeah.
Makes me think of the Lock, Stock, and Barrel game that we played, and Ryan was playing a preacher. And he literally stopped, and we all prayed during the thing, and I was like, I thought he was just going to say we did a prayer. No, we're doing this. Okay. We're doing it. It was just so fun.
Lord, bless these bullets to find our enemy.
It was great, though, because the two guys were so into it, and it felt so real. It's because, Ryan really does pray.
Yeah.
It's not like he was making up a fake prayer. He was in character, right?
Well, and see, that's something that faith influencing gaming.
Yep.
His character, he could do that because he's already done that with his faith.
Yeah.
So his faith influenced how he played the character. Even if it wasn't going to be a priest, he could have prayed another way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I had another moment like that, was playing with, shout out to Copper Dragon Games, playing with those guys, and I got put in as a paladin or something, and so I wanted to bless the journey ahead of time. I can't remember what I did, but pulling from some Catholic tradition, and I just went down and he asked a saint to bless me, sort of thing, went for it, and the other player's like, oh, you're one of those kind of paladins. And I was it's just it carried this weight, because I just stole this little aspect, this little thing, but it carries all that weight with it just because of the history of it in real life.
And characters in game are going to recognize that,
right?
So in the world, a paladin doing that is to be expected, because in most games, gods are everywhere, spiritual powers flying around all the time.
Yeah.
All these people, we got magic fire bolts and stuff like that. Stuff's weird, stuff's extra in a game. So having a highly devoted paladin, which this actually would be a normal feeling thing in a game, for the paladin to kneel down, offer a prayer to his god for safe travel, stuff like that, and get back up. Because during the classic image, not necessarily behaviors, but the classic image of a paladin is very much like the Crusaders, and they would do that type of thing. So taking those habits and incorporating them makes that character feel very real. And the reaction of the players, or even if it was the PC's reaction, they could be like, that's one of those. We got one of them in the party this time. So
never heard that before in real life.
Yep. You don't pray before you eat?
Why are you so happy all the time?
We did get that a lot when I used to work.
Joy.
There you go.
Or shout out for those with relationships too. We got a lot of, wait, you guys aren't living together yet? Why don't you just live together? And it's like, come on. I mean, just statistically, it's not a good idea, but
yeah. I mean, if you're going to go for it, go for it.
Yeah, it always led to a good conversation. I'm like, well, because I'm a Christian, I think I should put a ring on it.
Yeah.
And I always got a lot of the, oh, you know what? That's kind of a good idea. I'm
Yeah,
not
you
gonna
think so?
do it.
That's why everybody was doing it for centuries
Yeah.
until. Okay, that's off topic.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's
Build
all
your
Wrangle me
house
in.
on a rock,
Yeah.
not on the sand.
Yeah, she wants a rock in it, so that's what she's saying.
Yeah.
But a point that I brought up last time with them, and I kind of wanted y'all's perspective on it too, was the idea that being a Christian and living in view of eternity actually makes that part of your faith actually makes you better at playing a long-lived species. So elves, depending on the lore, they can live forever or really long or something like that. But if you live in view of eternity and you realize, wow, Christ talks about the kingdom coming, and then it comes in him, and we are part of the kingdom now. When we obtain our salvation, when we go through that sanctification, when we have that, we are part of the kingdom now. Our eternity has begun. That's powerful. And when you live in that type of an understanding, you can be like, yeah, I get why this elf would feel this way. Or I get why this dwarf would do that. So
that's really interesting. Yeah. My mind always tends to, I can't remember is it from Chesterton where the mathematician tries to get heaven and the artist tries to get his head into heaven, but the logician tries to get heaven into his head and his head explodes. That's usually how I feel when I think about that idea. It's amazing, but that's really, I don't think I consciously thought of that, but that definitely makes sense. And on top of that too, I always end up, and it's obviously from my faith, thinking about those mortals that do die, what happens to their souls afterward, which does not always have to be an assumption in a game, but I always have an eternal perspective on all the beings in the worlds I make, because I come with that kind of assumption that these with sentience, with this consciousness, what we have, for me, it's assumed that there is something immortal about that because it's a gift that's been given to us. So that's interesting. I gotta think. I don't know. What do you think?
I was thinking, like, because we have this eternal perspective, like, I always think, what am I gonna do? New heaven, new earth, and stuff, and all the things that I want to do.
Play more games.
Yeah. And all that thing. And so it does give you a little bit, because I've thought about that, because I think I'm going to have all this time. I mean, I believe that. So I guess you could put yourself in the shoes of somebody who has lived that, or lived a long time and done all the things, kind of, but we never have enough time, People, I've heard that people get overwhelmed with the thought of eternity and stuff. And I'm like, there is, I mean, if you have eternity, you can sit there and watch a flower grow. Just watch it grow. And I would be fine with that.
There's your elf, just like what you're saying, right? An elf would have that perspective.
Yeah, everything slows down, I guess, because you're like, I have the time. I don't need to be rushing, right. So, like, I feel like moments that I've missed with people on this earth, I'm like, I'm going to gain that back, and, and we're going to have that time and all the things that I want to do. And I don't know. So, yeah, you could think of, like, your character has done all those things because they've been around for so long.
Yeah. And in a lot of games, you have elves are like really good craftsmen and dwarves are really good craftsmen. Well, it's because they can spend 100 years making something,
right?
If they're immortal. They don't usually do that if they're not immortal, but if they're like the Tolkien elves, their stuff's crafted that way because they're practically immortal,
right?
I mean, practically, for all intents and purposes, barring death or barring violence or illness, they're immortal. They have the time to sit and make this super intricate thing, working on it every single day for centuries. And it makes it interesting when you would think about that and be like, you know what? Yeah. If we're looking in view of eternity, there is all the time in the world. Once you understand that, you may not, in this earth life, you know you've got to get things done. You don't have forever on this earth life. But those long-lived races kind of would.
Right.
And so you can appreciate that. You can approach it that way. And it also leads into the last thing I had, was that gives us a better appreciation for things like the deities and afterlife, spiritual powers and afterlife. As someone who lives with an understanding of those two places of heaven and hell, those destinations, those choices that you have to make, that fate you have to choose, with this destiny he's presented you, this fate you have to choose of either to accept it or reject it. You've thought about those places, and you can give a better appreciation. Your faith gives you a better appreciation for what that would really kind of look like in your setting and in your games, and how your characters would feel about it and stuff like that.
You have like a greater reverence for a god, you know, in a way. Like my characters usually take it very seriously, because I take it very seriously. Yeah. You know, which is that also that conflict of the, you know, not wanting to serve any other gods or anything, you know, because I get so immersed in character, you know, that I want to make sure draw that line.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of already mentioned it with the souls and stuff. I default to thinking about that. It just seems natural, which is kind of funny. And yeah, I don't know. I'm coming back to that too. It's so interesting. I'm a funny person. I'm baffled that it just didn't cross my mind. And I've tried to think about it more of the deity stuff. And I'm going to kind of bring it back. I apologize. Of how much these aspects of these stories, our faith is influencing it, and it's saying something. We just can't help but say something when we're telling stories together, saying something about it and having it push us and test us too, which is kind of getting into the next conversation. So I don't want to jump too far. So yeah, I don't know. I appreciate, as a game master with like players like Austin and Kristen, of getting that into it, and I can see from the outside the effects of their faith on their characters, and to me it's a beautiful thing, and I just love seeing it and being a part of it. And the other aspect, I think too, of as a group, especially for tabletop RPG, you are telling a story together, and just like for us, you know, we always pray before we play games. And I had someone ask if you were worried, well, are you doing something demonic if you feel you got to pray? And I was like, no, we pray before everything we do.
It's do that.
Bad. It's like, thank you, God, for this moment. But it's just a small thing too. I love inviting. Every time I pray, God, thank you so much for this silly game and for this opportunity to be with these people and just reflect your glory in some tiny way in telling this story together. I don't know. I think for me, that's I think the most influential thing my faith has on it, is appreciating these eternal people I'm with, that I will know even in the kingdom to come, and we get to tell a story together and reflect, just like we said, a scribble compared to what God's doing. Is just, I think it makes me value the time being spent together more than if I didn't, I guess. I think, yeah. You give me your eye. She gives me this eye squint.
Well,
it's like nerd.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's not wrong.
No.
I knew what I was getting into.
But that appreciation for the eternal, for those long-lasting things and those spiritual things, as Christians in modern society today, you've got a lot of fiction where it talks about, oh, they're doing soul magic, or oh, they're doing this or doing that. Well, that makes a big difference to someone who appreciates the value of a soul. Like necromancy. in your game, if necromancy is soul magic, it's evil. If necromancy is simply animating a corpse, then you get into gray areas because there's no damage to the soul. It depends on your setting. And because the reason that people make that distinction is because even people who aren't Christian, God says he's set eternity in the hearts of man. For us to know there's just more out there. There's just something that is beyond us. There's something spiritual about everything. This can't be all there is. And as a Christian, you're able to say, yeah, that's soul magic. Soul magic's bad. Don't mess with soul magic. Type of thing in most settings. And it makes you better. It can have a better immersion and understanding of the evil of the demons that eat souls and stuff. Like Ulkan from your setting. He eats the souls of traitors. Are those traitors souls? Yes. Are those evil souls? Yes. Is he evil for eating them? Yes. See, the type of soul doesn't matter. It's the evilness of even eating the soul, taking in the soul.
Right.
Makes Nahazik evil because he uses soul magic that way. But Kristen's characters are not evil because they steward the souls. They guide the souls. And so this idea of a positive aspect to death, that's easily achievable in a Christian mindset when you realize, yes, there's the difference between stewarding and harming, stewarding or consuming. So we better appreciate settings and things in a setting like that when we come with our faith perspective.
Just a quick note on Aurora. So she's kind of like a Grim Reaper sort of character. And she says, she has the same line she says, face thy judgment due, whether you did well or you did evil. If you are a betrayer and you're being sent to Ulkan, she still says that same line. And I think for me, that was an aspect of my faith in a way. I mean, it's more works-based because it's a game, but regardless, the idea of the path you're taking, now you get to face it. And if you are taking a full Christian perspective, if you're under the, we all should face our judgment due and go to hell. But with the freedom that Christ gives us through his death and resurrection, we get to hear face thy judgment due, and we get Christ's judgment.
Right.
And so that aspect of that I wanted in the game of the same line could be
a blessing or a curse.
Blessing. Yeah. So I love that.
I like to say that she's the blade of necromancers.
Oh.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. We've come to the end of my points, and we're probably pretty close to the 1 hour mark, I think. So,
yeah.
All
Got
right.
a couple minutes.
Oh, good.
Anything else?
So,
yeah.
Any final thoughts before we sign this one off and go to the next one?
I think my final thought would be going back to the idea of if you're struggling with whether you should be a part of these things or not, there's not a blanket, just this is evil. I do think you got to search, like Kristen was saying, searching your heart, taking it to God, and being okay about like even praying about games, praying about silly games is okay. And I think there are some people who shouldn't do TTRPGs because there may be things in their lives where this is either going to steer them wrong or it's going to put a weight on it. I think especially now, current day, I haven't met too many of those people, but that's anecdotal. It's okay to wrestle with that. And so grace for people who are wrestling with that, I think is the thing. Because it surprised me because I didn't think about that. It was surprising to have that kind of just like, oh, I got to think about this, I guess. So it's okay to wrestle with that. And it's not just having grace on the other side of it isn't innately evil. Certainly look into the types of games you're playing or looking into because there can be ones that are trying to do that. but there's so many now to choose from. There's so many, and so easy to homebrew your own thing that there's lots of ways to play where I don't think you're in sin in playing that.
You, as long as you can differentiate fantasy from reality, you're fine. Is kind of my 2 cents on that one.
Yeah, in general.
And trusting that God knows your heart and knows where you stand, you know.
Church people can have fun too.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, Jesus.
Okie dokie. Well, I guess that means we've come to the end of this one. Tune in next time to see how our games have influenced our faith. So, have a great day. God bless and enjoy. Bye.
Bye.
This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
Okay.
You're awesome.
Well.
It's so good though. Talk about this stuff.
Yep.
People,
I know.
we have this at church all the time. Whenever you say I play Dungeons and Dragons, they're like,
there's the group that go, and then there's the group that go like,
I know you. It's a very like.
I do too.
Yes, that's what it is. You're one of them too.
You're one of those.
You're one of us.
Yeah.
I'll just quick check the recording.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I just want to make sure. If it all falls apart, at least only half of it fell apart.
Yeah, you got my face too.
Yes.
I think they're pretty.
Hold on. I truly have it. I think I have more clear thoughts on gaming affecting my faith. I'm just, I don't know. Hopefully I didn't.
Well, we don't always see how our faith is influencing our gaming because it's influencing everything in our lives.
Right.
So when we actually stop and think about it, we're like, oh, yeah, I do this and this in my games because I believe this and this, or so on and so forth.